we have our curriculum, a syllabus given to you by the state government about where that it sits, I guess, like where a student should be for that level of competency. We have this kind of intelligence explosion. Like what is that? The net good for society if we actualized, if we are all if you get a kid from year 1 to 12 with this AI tutor who basically follows them their whole way through their school. They have the certain voice persona. They're a visual learner. And they follow it, and they are just so intelligent. Every kid is just like so intelligent. What? And then they go out and there's no jobs for them to go. There's no job for them to go and do.
I reckon they might be a bit ageist too. I reckon if you're 85, they're like,
they're still adolescents. They say you're adolescent till you're like 27 these days. So are you still an adolescent?
I've got about 9 more months to go.
Yeah, okay.
Still a kid.
All right, well, let's get started.
Yeah.
Ty Haberland, welcome to Scotch College and welcome to the Range Project.
Thank you very much.
Now, Ty, you were buying Bitcoin when you were in my Year 12 English ATAR class. You were meant to be writing essays. You were actually a very good English student with probably not a huge amount of work. But what were you doing buying? What gives?
Much to both our dismay, Sam, I didn't end up making any money on it. I'll say that much. There was only really 2 reasons that you were into Bitcoin back in 2012, 2013. It was either you were doing it for nefarious reasons, as it was back then, or you were a nerd. And unfortunately, I fell into the latter. But it was just this crazy decentralized finance for me. Always kind of, I thought would have high potential, if only because of the fact that even back then I was highly fascinated with computers, technology, and seeing this kind of new methodology of finance, I thought might have something to it. It was speculative. It was trading for about $300 back then. Obviously we hit about $80,000 Australian, I think, at its peak a couple of years ago. So, yeah, there's some love lost. Not so much my parents though, not listening to their teenage son for investment advice, which they should have.
Well, okay, so let's stick with your Scotch life, your Scotch experience. Beyond buying Bitcoin, what did you enjoy about Scotch? What did you learn? What do you remember?
Yeah, look, I think for the most part, I had a good time. It was, I like to think I took the best of it in the sense that I recognised the immense privilege I had to go there, but I don't certainly think that I have anything coming to me. Obviously those formative years are pretty important, and I think coming out of it, I learnt a lot more about what kind of learner I am. Someone who is always kind of looking for the path of least resistance, I guess, and it's honestly leaning into that more post-Scotch, which has been quite fascinating and has kind of led to my career today, because, as much as I would like to say that I always liked taking the kind of different route and creative route to things, I did end up going into commerce and then law, which is hardly the path less trodden, so I acknowledge that. But no, great memories from Scotch, and, still very, very good friends with a lot of people from there today.
You were talking before about your kind of sweet spot age and how your introduction to social media. So when did you get introduced to social media, and how do you think that might have impacted you if you would have been, years before or years later?
I always attribute, there is an odd memory of me watching The Social Network, I reckon, just as about it when I was starting. It's such a good film, and I do remember looking at Zuckerberg portrayed in that, and as much as all the drama and everything like that, it was a real moment for me tech-wise, for whatever reason. And I say that very, that was 2010. Now we're here with Facebook and Meta, etc. But no, I think social media was such a, and yeah, I did always have this conversation with my mates around what social media was to us compared to even, I have an older sister a few years above, a younger brother a few years below, and my kind of age in particular was such an interesting transition of where we kind of grew up with, MySpace when I'm just a kid, and MySpace had that general, freedom of being able to post whatever you want. There's no care factor to it. Social media, it's not a platform for politics, not a platform for free speech. There's none of the kind of stuff there. By the time that I was finishing high school, though, you had Instagram out, you had Twitter out, you had things where all of a sudden people needed to actually watch what they were putting out there, just a little bit, not quite so much, but people cared about likes a little more. People cared about their appearance and what their profile looked like. it was quite an interesting time to be kind of coming, of age in that time, because the expectation we had shift live in front of us of going like, oh, you can't upload that anymore. Whereas before, and for generations before us, it just was, free game.
Did you feel like there was a sort of loss of freedom or something there at that junction?
Perhaps, yeah. And I think it's something that it can only really be uniquely attributed to us, because we kind of felt it, whereas people younger just grew up thinking that, you care about your social media, like you have to treat it this way. Whereas for us it became like, I used to upload, there'd be some old Facebook memory still pops up occasionally of me being like, forgot my tie at school today. Like I status that, and it's like you would not see a year 8 being caught dead doing that kind of thing these days.
Yeah, there's some milestones in kind of human history. I think that social media one, we're probably hitting a big one now with AI, which is largely what we're here to talk to you about as well. So how do you think these milestones are in terms of significance? The maybe all the way back to Industrial Revolution, and then whatever other kind of stages we've had up until social media revolution, and is this the AI revolution? How do they vary in levels of significance, or do you just see this as one next iteration?
I think the AI point is we've had AI in our products for so long. And speaking of social media, the algorithms powering what is on our Facebook feed and what is on our Netflix and what is on our Spotify, everything like that has been whirring for so long now. It's just become ubiquitous. We don't even acknowledge the fact that algorithms basically were our entire back end of Google Maps. It's all driven. Like, so much technology is driven right now. The thing is that it's all behind the scenes. And I think the reason why December last year we had the advent, and suddenly every my own grandmother's talking to me about ChatGPT, is because of the fact that came out, and OpenAI released this little chatbot, which for the first time allowed people to interact with something that they it was a personified large language model, basically. That milestone is significant because it kind of ushered in this whole era of, okay, now that we can actually see the capability of it, not that these machines haven't been capable before, but they haven't been tuned to be able to talk to me, for instance, and be able to answer my questions about this and that, and help me with my work, and give me advice, all these other things like that. They've always just been this kind of like, the word AI before this just felt like it was just like something gearing you in
so
the
they're
other
becoming
direction.
more personable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And reflecting human beings back at us a little more explicitly, aren't they, than say a Google Maps, which arguably has all this amazing AI technology, maybe just as much going on at the back end as a ChatGPT potential, but it's reflecting our humanity back at us almost.
Yeah. So it's kind of becoming more human. So if you want to extend or extrapolate on that trend, you can kind of see where things may.
Yeah, well, here's a good question for you too. Like, how do you speak to ChatGPT? Because I've discussed with my boss and with my parents and stuff as well, and they both lean towards saying please and thank yous to ChatGPT, because it will apologize, it will do certain things. I am of the opinion that I'm like, do this. Like, I am the taskmaster, you are the robot, follow my command kind of thing. But I get quite weirded out how many what I think very rational, intelligent people come back and go, please, can you do this for me? Oh, thank you so much. It's like, it doesn't need that.
Yeah, I've played with both just for the hell of it, but I'm aware of that, and now I'm the same as you. I'm just like, do this now.
And if it's bad, I'll be like, that was.
Yeah, reword this. Don't be so extravagant with your language.
Yeah.
Just tone it down.
But isn't there an argument to say that there's a certain habitual way that you conduct yourself with people, and that you sort of, even though it is a robot, if you're sort of dehumanizing this thing, or giving it tasks, like, it's a different story to just say, like, can you create a lesson plan for me or something like that. But I do think that if you were asking this thing to do things in a really curt, aggressive way, and you're doing that 100 times a day,
it'll come back to kill you in the future.
That's the classic I've heard, is to get in its good side now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, just that there's something habitual about morality, isn't there? Like,
So it's you're teaching it some sort of.
But what you're doing is kind of personifying it now, Sam. Though, by even saying that, like, you have to give it morality in any sense, like that it isn't just essentially a tool, because these. And what's always kind of folded for me there is the fact that we've taught it, like the language that it'll say to you and saying things like sorry and I can do this for you. That's just all, it's algorithms to kind of get those words out. Like they don't mean anything to it in any necessary sense.
Well, now that you mention it, it does make sense. I don't sort of, when I go to mow the lawn, I don't say to the
Sam's ridiculously
lawn
polite to the point of annoyance. To everything, including AI.
I guess I don't talk to my toaster,
Yeah.
and I'm not polite to my toaster. So yeah, it makes a good point. All right, I'd love to get now into we're into our topic of AI, but I'd love to know, and I'd love our listeners to know, what are you doing in that space right now? Like, what are you doing for a job? How does it link to AI? What exciting stuff's coming out of that work right now?
Yeah. So I'm a lawyer first and foremost. I started off doing kind of commercial litigation for about a year there, but my roots were always in computer science and technology in general. I started off doing my degree in computer science back at uni. Turned out didn't like coding as much as I did kind of talking about computers and stuff. So pivoted into law here, and then by happen chance got my dream job basically here at Stirling and Rose. So we are a boutique emerging technology law firm. Our focus is basically wherever the law doesn't fit very nicely for startups, enterprises, very cool, cutting edge technology. We're there to kind of help adapt the law into that. So we help a lot of blockchain clients and stuff as well. A lot of just general software as a service.
Is there a big market for that in Perth, or are you international?
A lot of over east. A lot of over east. Yeah, technology in Perth is booming, but if it doesn't have the magic mining word attached to it, you'll find that it's a lot of stuff happening in Sydney in the blockchain space, and there's a lot of great builders out there. So, pretty much anything, emerging technology. So that includes, of course, in the last year massively, as the rest of the world kind of pivoted per se into AI, and now we get the opportunity to kind of advise massive enterprises and other potential, just growing really cool people who are building things in this space.
Are you able to tell us about any of these technologies? I mean, or perhaps a lot of this stuff is confidential, to be honest. Yeah. But are there companies that have gone to market that you're allowed to talk about?
Look, just people really. Like, there's a lot of people at the moment, and I think that this is particularly relevant for like law firms in general. Like, the shift of capitalizing on AI at the moment, you either get early adopters right now who are kind of playing with it, and they might be deploying their own large language model, for instance, like doing one own in-house that's not on OpenAI servers, and they will be building that on their own enterprise, documents, things like that, privacy preserving. So the kind of, even policy advice on what they might need to look out for, what kind of legalities are around, client confidentiality from their end as well. There's a lot of cool stuff happening at the moment. Yeah.
All right,
That's a very legal answer, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I had this question pegged for a bit later in the podcast, but I'm going to jump to it now. When can we expect to see radical changes in the way that we work as a result of AI developments? Because we have discussed before how, this stuff's incredible, but it's not yet really getting sort of infiltrating the workplace that much, and it's not changed much in people's lives. So
the stat is quite public facing. Completely agree. The statistics on junior employees using ChatGPT is massive, and I think as part of that, depends on what survey you look at, but I think it was Routers or something like that. They did 70% of juniors using ChatGPT have not told their boss that they're using it. And you can see why. I mean, why would you not?
I wonder what percentage of students are doing that?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, if I'm a junior employee and I can 10x my productivity and get something to my boss in 30 minutes time with fine tuning of a task that he usually expects me to take 2 days on, and I can spend the other 7.5 hours of the day hanging out. Why people are not telling? Yeah, you can see it. In terms of actual enterprise,
have you told your boss?
Regrettably, I work in AI law, so my bosses are all across ChatGPT. They knew about the day it came on, so there's no hiding from them. I think
they're the biggest users.
Yeah, exactly. The enterprise shift that we're going to see, and I mean, I sound like a Microsoft spokesperson every single time I talk about Copilot, but Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is going to be coming out TBC, but probably by the end of the year, if not, Q1 2024, I think is a rough release date. That's going to be such a supercharge of like what general businesses will just kind of whack onto. They've announced their pricing recently. It's like $30 per user per month. And that is going to be able to... The example I always use is like, we're having a Teams meeting. From that Teams meeting, I want a summary of the Teams meeting. I want you to put it into action items. So do this full write-up of everything we discussed for this full hour, put it into what needs to be done next. I then say, can you email that off to the other departments, and can you get me started on that deck we were talking about? It then opens up your PowerPoint and starts, in your firm's branding, firm's everything. We'll have a full PowerPoint deck there of 20 slides based on, and this is pulling from the whole corpus of your data that you own as a company. So all your random spreadsheets, things like that, it'll be smart enough to kind of interpret it all and give it a good a great starting point for you. That level of productivity, again, it's going to be so built into just the tools you already use. Like Windows 11 is just going to have this in your bottom of your icon. Your Word's going to have this on your right-hand sidebar. It's just going to be sitting there. That's going to start to change the way, to answer your question, like how work is actually done, because it's going to become less like, let's use AI, and more just like, I'm using the computer. Like, this is just my assistant.
This is like, I wonder about efficiency of work, and I wonder, we've always gotten more and more efficient with things, but we never seem to get any less busy. So what happens in that situation? We're far more productive, and I think humans just generally have a tendency to create that equal amount of drama and busyness all the time. What do you think will happen in that situation? I also kind of want to follow that on with purpose in work as well, but we'll talk about the first thing.
I believe that line was often used around email and the fax machine and everything else, and the computer and the internet. A lot of productivity necessarily, we fill the gap. We fill the time that is required always. And I do think that this next frontier will start to push the bound, because if you have some project and, let's put it in Perth scale, like mining project up north, you are getting your business people to get through all the deals. Your lawyers are able to pump out these contracts in a matter of hours. You are the sign-offs, the contractors, everything is just so sorted, but there's still a big project to be done. And if we can work things out, like things that used to take a timeline of 6 months to do paperwork, if that can now be done in 4 days, we will eventually hit a point of end game where it's like, okay, we're sitting on our hands now waiting till something's actually finished in real life, in real time, something tangible. There's only so much,
and that's when we'll get even better at pretending to do work.
Yeah, literally.
I was pretty good at that when I was an engineer. But I mean, even designing conveyor belt systems and whole iron ore plants, that can all be done as well, surely.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd have entire teams.
Yeah.
Doing that kind of thing.
No, the AutoCAD abilities will
I just can't imagine what will happen when there are a whole bunch of people that feel redundant. And back to that now this purpose question, right? So there's a criticism of the Industrial Revolution that people have lost a little bit of purpose because you're more removed from the creator to the end product. You'd have someone who's making a thing and giving it to you, and you're the user. Yep. And now it's become a cog in a machine type situation. How is purpose impacted now when people, like in our situation, let's say kids are just writing essays using ChatGPT, and we're using ChatGPT to market. It's just like one guy sitting back on a couch going, pressing a button, and then the teacher going, pressing the button to market. What's the point?
Yeah. You're questioning our entire economic system right there. Like feeling purpose as a human being in light of where, like, there is some weird part where I see maybe part-time jobs becoming quite standardized. Like we might kind of do what we need to do or what our meaning is. I mean, others out there might find that wrapping your identity so heavily up in work is a falsehood in itself, and we are so guilty of that because of capitalism that we need to find so much meaning. But in the same way, it's difficult when you've only known this to not kind of wake up in the morning and be like, I want to do something. Like as we discussed before, it's just like there's only so many hobbies and things like that you can do in a day before it does. It'd be cool if the whole world was hanging out, like, jamming and painting and using all the creativity. But I mean, is that sustainable? Do we need to? Where's the food? Where's everything coming from? Like, if the robots are feeding us in some hedonistic kind of like, you have everything, so now just pursue pleasure.
It is an interesting question, right? Because I remember reading recently that this physics team, high-powered physics team at one of these top universities, was saying they did some study on it, saying we're only productive for about 6 hours a day. Anyway, we're only really firing for 6 hours as a team, working out all these interesting physics questions. So by 1 p.m., 2 p.m., you're not going to get much out of us anyway. Whether our culture, given this technology, might take a lot of this stuff off our plate, it might be that, we rather than the 5-day work week, we have the 4-day work week and the 4-hour day rather than the 8-hour day. And, so that 4 hours still gives us that sense of got to get out of bed in the morning and contribute. But then, I'd be pretty happy to have the odd Arvo off where I can literally play my guitar and, do all these kind of things, hang out with the kids and go to the beach. Yeah, what are your thoughts on the entire economic system?
That's a big one. Oh, look, I mean, and as I said, like, we got there is Silicon Valley at the top there, where there is a genuine, the disincentive to kind of stop AI work, which is what you see some people calling for, in light of, have we got to work out what we're doing? But it's like, whilst this current system runs and whilst big data is kind of housed where it's housed at the moment, there's no stopping the train at the moment. Like, that's just kind of the reality we live in. And I think that there's something not so much existential, but more of like a, you gotta
well, I think we will find purpose in other things. I think, we tend to get a little bit less healthy over the years, I think.
For sure.
And I think maybe people find a bit more time to go to the gym regularly, or actually take up a proper passion project. You joke about jamming and painting and things like that, but if there's things that people want to do, learning languages, and we'll have time for, it'd be great if we did have time for that, and then we can maintain the motivation to do that.
Yeah, I mean, even if it just took a couple of hours off the day of people as far as work and stress.
I mean, what percentage of efficiency are we talking about here? Like, you're talking in scale of like 6 months down to 4 days for an entire team of people. Like, we're talking massive scales of efficiency. Surely we can get to the point where we have 2 hours less work a day.
Yeah.
Talk about. Oh, do you have something? I wouldn't talk about pleasure, because you mentioned you mentioned
I can't
that before.
interrupt when you want to talk about pleasure, Steve.
We'll keep it G-rated, but you did mention that before about how AI can enhance pleasure.
That sounds way worse than what we were talking about.
But we're talking about entertainment here, and customized entertainment. I got like a notification on Spotify saying you're going to AI DJ now for me. That's going to tell me all my favorite hits and project new artists for me, and just it'll know what type of mood I'm in and play the type of music I need to. Where does this end?
I think that extrapolating out of that is probably my biggest, beyond any kind of workforce concerns or even privacy concerns and things like that. The more so society living in their own hyper personalized reality is definitely where my fear factor goes, because I can see the path just so clearly this very second. And you guys would have seen like the Apple Vision Pro came out or got announced. That's coming out early next year. It's about $3,000 US, so it'll be like $5,500 Australian. We'll see someone wearing one of those out in the street one day, and you're going to look at them and it'll be a meme for 5 minutes, right? Then give it a couple more years after that, it'll be a kind of some more slimmer looking version, a lot more consumer friendly, a lot more price point friendly as well. A couple more years after that, we're talking it's the price of a phone. Now it becomes a choice of whether or not you're going to get a phone or this, because the phone operates the same way.
So what about, I did hear on a podcast Elon Musk having a big crack at Mark Zuckerberg on this one, because he said, when I was a kid, I was told not to sit too close to the television. Yeah. And these are, I guess these goggles are.
Well, you can kind of put like an IMAX
sort
display on them. Like that's the thing. The TV market, weird one to be disrupted. You would never have thought, but it's going to be quite like the TV is going to be dead in the living room soon, because everyone's going to have their own IMAX cinema
most
display.
Kids now will watch.
Absolutely,
you're right. To some extent,
at the same time,
that's happening.
TV.
Yeah, that's happening already, isn't it?
But I think that's probably just isn't he trying to get some traction for his upcoming jiu-jitsu fight?
I think
start a bit of beef.
Zuckerberg's got the Quest and stuff like that as well. Meta's pushing on the space, but it's Apple that tends to kind of usher in like the normalness of a lot of these things. And coming back to our social media point before around like that gradual transition through. Like, you know, even back then, like, we would have never iPods and things like that when I was in high school were just for like looking at every 5 minutes of the day. Like you'd spend a bit of time and you'd use it to select your songs. And you know, right now, I tell people about this kind of thing on how much we're going to have this augmented, you know, eyeglass or even eye contact. It'll get to the point where we've got like kind of eye contacts that can put up a kind of HUD display on what we see, and you're going to be able to generate your own world out of generative AI on that and be able to live in essentially, you know, fantasy land. And people look at me and go like, you know, but I don't want that. Like, that sounds terrible. I like, you know, having a beer down at the pub with my friends. And it's like, yeah, you do now, but this isn't going to happen tomorrow. We're not just going to get this tomorrow. It's going to be this gentle step of being like, oh, I'll get that for the plane. And then you're immersed in the plane, and then it's going to step forward beyond that. Then work will want you to come and have a meeting in this weird setting, and then it's just this small.
Well, we've already got those kind of conditioned things happening with algorithms for TikTok and Instagram. It's just a constant entertainment feed. And you were saying before, can you kind of explain about how we might actually see this entertainment, like creating your own movies and?
Yeah, so you're already seeing, like, I mean, generative AI artwork has already just blown up in this last year. Like, you are able to create these absolutely amazing escapes. You know, a lot of our branding for our law firm, like we completely embrace the tools. Like, they're just fantastic in terms of creating really unique imagery that is suited to the style of our firm, and we've kind of got our branding guide, and that works for us. But we're starting to see that now push into music a little more. I'm sure you would have seen some of the, you know, there's a lot of memes around it and things like that. If you can put someone's voice singing a classic song, you know, Elvis doing some Barbie girl song that just came out the other day. It's that extrapolation that where we're going to music that is suited towards me, or movies that are suited towards me. The movies at the moment are very choppy, and you know, you get about 20 seconds of footage.
So this is an AI generated movie.
Yeah.
I want a movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
With a romantic lead with whoever.
Yeah. 2 hours, plot lines about this, it's set in outer space, blah blah blah.
And much like ChatGPT feeds you a little short story, this just does it visually.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we're just
so this doesn't happen yet, but this will.
No, but
we've got 30. We were up to about
20 seconds of like choppy looking, and honestly, like that I said that probably that last time I checked, it was about 2 weeks ago that we were at that point where.
So this is like Doom of the video games back when I was a kid, and now it's Fortnite.
Yeah. Great analogy. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but that comes down to video games as well. Like, that's all going to just be custom preset. You're already seeing some incredible. One went viral recently where you are able to talk to, you know, the NPCs on the street of something like Grand Theft Auto, for instance. Like, you're going to be able to speak to them, and they're going to be able to AI generate speak to you back. Well, that's already happening live, and you can so these worlds that you're going to be in are just going to be so immersive. And and coming back full circle, I think that's my biggest fear, or just the new paradigm that we're going to be living in, is where I'm going to be able to kind of disconnect from what's happening in this world and just procedurally generate whatever I feel like, and nobody's going to have any more shared experience, which I think is such a shame, and something about our biology isn't meant for individuals to just.
I value that, and I see it's happened over my, you know, timeline. It's when I was a kid, everyone at school would watch Hey Hey It's Saturday. Yeah. Right, and you talk about it, and now I don't know what anyone likes. I don't know what band that is. I don't know what movie that is. It's really hard to get that connection.
Atomization, isn't there, that the technology creates?
Yeah.
What about this idea that we had a chat about earlier about they're called digital-free national parks?
Yes,
that sounded like a fascinating idea. Well, can you tell us about that?
Stirling and Rose is kind of pro bono project that we support, which is basically on this premise that, you know, you guys might have also seen like Elon Musk Neuralink and stuff, which is getting the full, you know, brain implants in there. You're combining this with augmented reality, with, you know, whatever kind of other wearable peripherals that we're going to have on us at all times. There comes a point when we might, and even, you know, I think by the time this is so tuned in that like people my age when we're a bit older will just want the point to switch off, like and properly be disconnected from any kind of subliminal or even just direct technology. And the idea to kind of have sanctities in this world is like crazy as is to kind of prophesize. Like, I mean, when was the last time that you guys were properly like off the grid? It's been probably a hot minute. Like, you kind of have to go. We're lucky enough to have that
pretty
down
regularly,
south.
luckily. Yeah. But I know a lot of people don't. But I was just thinking, how often do people even walk without headphones in, or sit at a bus stop without looking at their phone. It's very rare.
Without or not have their phone on them.
Yeah, 100%. I'm so guilty of sometimes even walking down the shops or something like that, and it's just like you kind of feel this urge to be like, I better put a podcast in, or I better do something during this walk. You can't kill the
fill this space.
You can't kill the time like
Listen
that.
to the Range Project.
That's the only thing I would endorse.
and I just think that so there are a couple of solutions about that, to either kind of keep the wearables at the door of these kind of either these government national parks or kind of carved out areas of the earth that we put for, and then there's other points around keeping even like satellite dishes, like low orbit satellite dishes, from actually putting internet coverage over those particular areas, which we're looking at the viability
That's
of.
complex
But
stuff, right?
to actually block the satellite kind of things off, so that people can just go there and just not have it. And I think that as we go forward, it's going to become quite important, because you can certainly with it's not exactly like the big tech companies have shown themselves to be absolutely hey, we'll leave you to your own kind of being. Like they can be pervasive.
They want your attention.
Yeah, they want your attention, and I love that point that I've always considered, because I find myself, like, no matter how hard I can get sucked in just as bad as anyone else, even knowing full well about all this. And it was almost that quote that's always stuck with me about on the other side of the screen are hundreds of millions of dollars and PhD students, like PhD people who have been hired just to hold you, just to serve you the next right thing that's going to keep you on that app a bit longer, so you get one more ad out of it. It's like, it makes you think.
There's a machine, a whole machinery.
Yeah.
You know that film Minority Report? I don't know if you guys have seen that with Tom Cruise, where it is it's like a future world, and it is hyper personalized advertising. So you walk past a wall in St George's Terrace, and that personalized ad is just fed just to you, and then it disappears. As you kind of. I really like this idea, that because I think that's where things are heading, right? Increasingly invasive marketing and all that. To have at least these legislated space. I wonder if that could be, maybe that can't be done for small spaces.
Well, it is.
Just your park down the road.
It's done on your phone. That's all. Only thing people are looking at anyway, or on a device. Their Apple glasses. And it's like, but it becomes normal. You think, everyone's watching videos.
But half the people that are down the dog park down the road that I go down to are on their phones half the time.
Yeah.
And I feel like you almost need something to come up on the phone to say this space is sacred. Like, your phone doesn't work here.
I am surprised with Apple that they, during that Vision Pro commercial, the one that always stood out to me was when the dad was kind of like playing with the kids in there, and he's filming, he's capturing these memories through the Vision Pro headset, and his kids are running towards him. And the part that always got me was the fact that actually the dad's eyes, you can see them through, but because there's actually it's a black screen there, so the kids are actually being fed like a live stream of their dad's eyes through these goggles, right, while they're interacting with them. And I'm like, again, like there's I think like the jury's not out on like the biology of like a kid like looking at his dad's eyes through a screen like that just can't be good for us. Like no. We're just hardwired against like something like where you're just like your memories of your dad are kind of like looking at him through this big boxy headset,
blurred with a digital avatar sort of. Okay, so if we're going to get in dive a little more deeply into some of the fears of AI, I want to get a bit more philosophical with you on this. There are some arguments out there that these neural nets are getting so clever and so complex and so densely, so much compute power, so many connections. And there is an argument out there that with enough compute power and with enough density of network of connections, consciousness can actually emerge from a synthetic system. It doesn't have to be biological. From the stuff that you've been reading or listened to or know about these systems, which is more than most people, what do you think about that argument? Do you think that's a bit overblown, that concept?
It's whether or not it's how you kind of define the word intelligence and artificial intelligence, like what we consider to be intelligent as a human, because like for all intents and purposes right now, things that are what separates humans from other beings, I guess, is things like the thoughts and the decision making and the problem solving. But to put that into an AI, we would have to kind of work out what our own consciousness is. Like we have not worked that out yet as humans. I think if we manage to crack consciousness as a result of kind of trying to replicate it, I think forget AI, that'll be more of an accomplishment for mankind. Like we have so far away from understanding how exactly our brains work. Like I can't prove to you both that I'm conscious right now. Without any kind of measure of what consciousness is, even no objective benchmark of that, I don't know if we can necessarily replicate it. But I'm also guilty of, in the past, I think I'd be the first one to kind of be like, and I see a lot of lawyers kind of do this to justify their rates, is to kind of be like, you know, I'm thinking about the nuance of it. Like the robot isn't. It's just using mathematic probability to spit out the next word. But it's like, as am I right now, to kind of, I'm spitting out the next word from whatever's happening in my head about what I think is the best next thing to say.
Yeah.
Like based on the data that I've been fed over my entire life. Like my brain is complex as it is. Like if we're going to whittle down these things into simple data and algorithm, then what am I? Which is really philosophical.
That is you know, that is the distinction, isn't it? That there's like a rationality component to being conscious, but then there's all these other things, like, you know, you have a sense of intentionality. Like when you get up in the morning, you have personal goals. You know, that machines are not exhibiting that kind of stuff anymore. That sense of like, it is what it. You know, there's something that it is to be you. Yeah. With your own, I guess, vision, your own predictions of what's going to happen, your own sense of the future, your own imagination. But is there any, I mean, what's to say that one of these machines just doesn't one day go, hi, everyone. Yeah. I'm here.
And I mean, look, anyone who's tried any form of meditation before, when you're kind of actually focusing on your breath and the next thought that comes along, like you don't know where that thought comes from. And I think that if the robots somehow or other kind of, enough kind of values and weights and biases and stuff like that it starts to kind of question, you know, that whole sentience point of it suddenly going like, you know, what am I? Where's my sense of self amongst all this? What does that necessarily mean? I mean, if anything, I don't see that as, I find that just good. Like if we manage to crack consciousness, that's just the most impressive feat of mankind ever. Like we'll never do anything as impressive as that. We could go to the other planets in the universe, but I think that'll be the most amazing. So I mean, hey, I'm hoping I'm here for it. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Now, I think we need to get on to some more educational topics here, Steve,
absolutely.
if you don't mind. You've talked a lot about Copilot and the profound impact, you think, implications of that kind of technology. If we think about, like at Scotch, we have Sector as a learning management system. We use Office 365 as another learning management system effectively. What's to say, and how far off, if you could make any bold predictions about this, how far off would there be a company that comes out with a learning management system that has AI sort of embedded in it, that is like a tutor for the kids, a marker for the teachers, takes attendance, you know, does all a platform that does all of that and controls the learning in a sense, in helpful, beneficial ways? Is that, are we still talking miles off or something like that?
It's such a doozy, as I said, making predictions in this game when I've watched such intelligent people who had things like AGI capped at 2060, then pull that back by 20 years, and you know, even people who saw GPT-4 get released, and they pulled their predictions back by 5-6 years on anything from AGI to just certain use cases. So in terms of bold predictions, I always teeter in the safe space of kind of being like, it's going to be sooner than I think society thinks, but not as quick as, you know, my LinkedIn is an absolute echo chamber of like, this is coming tomorrow and you better be ready, and your teachers are out of a job tomorrow. Like get ready for it.
Well, it depends on the learning area, right? Yeah. I mean, there's some learning areas, I'm going to say potentially maths would be a little bit easier to do something like that, you know, defined answers and more heavily increasingly complex questions, whereas you go and try and make some of the things that we do in D&T, like AI is not going to, you know, they can't do that at all.
The physical
it can't do anything in the physical.
Yeah.
And so my job's safe. You're probably screwed more than anyone. ChatGPT, English teachers, they're first off the ranks. Then maths teachers, but I'm last.
Philosophy is still safe, mate.
Yeah.
We can just.
I've always had that analogy of the whole chess and, you know, the deep blue beating the grandmaster of chess kind of, but we still chess has had such a resurgence in the last few years. Like
absolutely,
we love watching humans do chess, and I think that should be seen as a kind of salvaging point to everything I've said previously, is the fact that like there's clearly something innate about us not wanting to pass everything over because we just don't want to see that. Like,
Yeah, that's such a good point. That the explosion of chess is when we know the machines can do it 50 times better than us. Still love doing it.
But who's watching AI versus AI chess all day? Like, that'd be boring.
Yeah. Well, and what has happened in education has been a big focus on these soft skills.
Yeah.
So, not just your rote memory and all these kind of things that you'd naturally expect to be taught at schools. Now we're trying to teach kids social skills, communication skills, and things that I don't think AI would ever really be able to do in a learning management system. Like, all that is not part of its game, right?
Yeah. All the human space, I guess.
Yeah.
The space that makes us uniquely human.
Well, yeah. I mean, how much of a kid, if in the same way, like around purpose and things like that, like a kid left to his own devices, like, God, if I didn't have you in the classroom, if I didn't have someone in the classroom pushing me to learn, like, how much learning is a kid going to do on their own? But
yeah, most of our job, I'd say, would be motivation.
Here's a question for you with like an AI tutor, because I think that concept is coming big time and very quickly. Maybe not this whole ecosystem learning management system where it's all wired into the one system, but I think that will come sometime. But just a platform that's an AI tutor. Do you think that a gamified version of that where it's got all the enticements that keeps you hooked but keeps you learning? Like, if you couple together the best of Fortnite's addictive qualities but teaching someone linear equations or something, you know what I mean? They might be able to. What do you think about that kind of stuff?
Oh, look, I think that the variance, like, it's the whole goldfish climbing a tree thing, where we might look back in the same way that I made the analogy with cars, that we'll look at 30 kids being taught in a classroom by one teacher and go, how the hell is that ever meant to work? And the only thing that they had in common was their age, like what year they were born. And we have like such different personality types and learning. I can definitely see that the education experience is no doubt going to get a lot more personalized by this. And I don't know quite where I fell. Like, I probably was one of the very few kids at Scotch that picked up a mind map actually from going to one of those sessions like that. That weirdly worked for me, much to the dismay of my friends. But like,
do you think if you had one of those AI tutors in a classroom, rewind back to 2014 or whatever, how would it have affected you, do you think? Because you're probably pretty self-motivated, not necessarily to write essays, but at the time, you know what I mean? Like, how do you think it would have affected you?
Yeah, if I had something that could communicate the way that I wanted to learn to me, and kind of, I do see the merit in kind of not so much they're giving the answer to, because I think that comes back to your point around process and things like that. Like, and got to be really careful of, and we're in this middle ground moment where kids are getting so used to ChatGPT and being able to just word it and give it a very bland answer, and that bland answer is then basically the answer, and so there's no craftsmanship to it. To have something alongside you that say, you've got the rubric in hand and the AI's helped you craft the rubric. Now it's almost acting as a coach of sorts to a student next to you, and I'm having a conversation to this AI coach or whatever, who's then prompting me to kind of dig a bit deeper, go a bit further on this point. This is good for the rubric. You're bouncing ideas off this actual sidekick of mine, less so giving the answer, but making sure that I'm still, it's prompting me to elicit my own thoughts out of it. Like, I think that's actually a net benefit for education. Like, I think that sounds pretty good to me. I think that we're kind of caught in this crossroad at the moment where kids are getting the answer a little bit too easily because the tools at the moment, or not so much the answer too easy, they're getting a answer too easily. And again, path of least resistance. I'm a 15-year-old kid. I'm submitting that answer. I'm not concerned about that's saving me from doing my homework for the night. Of course, I'm going to take it. But getting some kind of education system where we reward hard work still. We reward the actual thinking outside the box. And if anything, the AI is helping one think outside the box, which it's all waxing a bit theoretical at the moment, but you can see it. You can just see it.
What do you think? There might be a bit of a pivot towards the emphasis of speaking, social skills, oracy. If the written word gets very complicated, as you say, in terms of you write something down and speaking, articulating your thoughts, your ideas, that's hard to fake. Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah,
Or it's
there are
hard-
schools
so-
focusing on that entirely.
Yeah.
Brad was telling us about one.
Oh yeah. There's some school in New York that
Yeah.
has a massive.
Oracy.
Oracy is the centerpiece
Yeah.
of the culture of the school.
Cambridge PhD defense and things like that. It's systems like
Right.
that where you got to actually you to go and get grilled on your thesis. These very smart people going to really quiz you on what you meant by this and challenge your ideas.
I think that has to happen because if you're just memorizing something that you typed into ChatGPT, then.
But I can fault. You know, the education system's been like that for a while. You know, when I was at law school, for instance, like those law exams that I did, like they were complex, but there's also they can get formulaic because and there are certain things that I can even remember now, which are still stuck in my head, basically because if you wrote learning things long enough, they stick. And did I actually conceptually understand some of that content to the point that I should have, to the point that I got the grade I got, or because I was good at memory, or because I was good at the actual content? And I think that rethinking things like that, where the education system I do think rewards kind of the ability to perform under pressure in a 2-hour intense period versus the ability to actually understand the content. You know, definitely I saw people who were very smart get done by exam anxiety, even just simple as that. You falter on the day, something goes wrong, so be it. Like you now that reflected
stuck with it. And I mean, you're probably someone who I would imagine was okay in those situations, those sort of fast-paced, condensed situations. But as you say, so many students are not. They just don't think like that. They think deeply and just as intellectually about that subject matter. They just can't do it in a 2-hour block, you know.
And there's a 2-hour block, you know. I mean, some they think they've reformed it, but some of them like as much as 70% of your grade. You know, you do 12 weeks down to a 2-hour time period, which then counts for 70% of your entire mark.
So much stress.
That's
So much
crazy.
stress. We really should be trying to gauge how well students want to learn. I think that's if we could try to capture that would be a much better indication for me. Like that desire to learn and the the persistence. I think it's a much better indicator of future performance than just being able to memorize and cram for some test.
Going philosophical as well, I guess. Back to you guys though, like we have our curriculum, a syllabus given to you by the state government about where that it sits, I guess, like where a student should be for that level of competency. We have this kind of intelligence explosion. Like what is that? The net good for society are we actualized if we are all if you get a kid from year 1 to 12 with this AI tutor who basically follows them their whole way through their school, they have the certain voice persona, they're a visual learner, they follow it, and they are just so intelligent. Every kid is just like so intelligent. And then they go and there's no jobs for them to go. There's no job for them to go and do.
Really smart and no jobs. That sounds like a recipe for disaster for me.
Discontentment, exactly. How much of that brew if you're just sitting there, all right, mate, well done. Like time to go sit on the beach.
That's a good point.
Now, there's a couple of other things I want to talk to you about as far as education's concerned. So, this is more heading actually into sort of future focused career stuff for like if I'm a Scotch student, right? We had a guest on last week, Renee, and she made this great point about and she happened to have a job that had essentially sort of combined all the skills that she had into this awesome new job as a deputy director of the Space Centre at Curtin. And she sort of made the point is, that young people should be thinking about like what kind of job can I create out there, rather than like which job should I try to pick and then aim for that with whatever skill set I can put together. What are your thoughts on that in terms of your own career and what you think Scotch boys should be thinking about?
I think that is such a strong point. I think I read it was something like 50% of the jobs in like 20 years time aren't even created right now, and I think that it would be nigh impossible to even extrapolate any current skills that are being fed to you, all in the interest of learning. Like developing those critical thinking skills is just what's going to be all about. And this comes again to this whole ability to dissect information, make of it what you will, and apply it to different situations. Like a skill-based economy, I think is something we'll see a lot more of, like rather than choosing a profession for life, because I mean, there is a lot of that's going to hit soon, and to make any kind of career choices based on how things are in the present would be manifestly like false. Like it would just be
Just a bit naive, really.
Yeah. To think that if your dad's pushing you down a certain route of going like, hey, this worked for me, this will work for you. Like time and time again over the last 100 years of rapid growth, we've shown that is going to be false. I do get the Industrial Revolution one. I agree with a lot of people who kind of say like, and we were just saying this before, like it's such a tough one with AI because we get so caught in the trap of being like, oh, like this has happened before. Like we had the computer and then we just got busier, and we had the Industrial Revolution and all these 50% of farmers, 50% of the workforce was in agriculture, and then they all shifted to in other jobs. Like but they all found jobs. They're all fine. And then you think to yourself, but this one's different. And I think, but everyone since the dawn of times has said this time is different. But it's hard not to actually feel like, but it's just, obviously I'm so biased, but like it's hard not to actually be like, this one is different because we are quite literally developing something which is artificial general intelligence. If this is as smart as a human, like we've been good at narrow applications of technology to replace certain sectors, certain industries, and of course something else fits. But I do think it's quite a miss and even a bit like misguided for people to say things like,
Well, didn't we move a lot into like administrative type jobs, over the last little while, and then now this is where AI really gets going.
There's manual roles. Yeah, got the Goldman Sachs report like that. That's top of the list. Like it's administrative roles, and to then go and assume that someone has been in an administrative role for 30 odd years is now going to go and become and what are the new jobs that people love to tout? It's like AI engineer. It's like she's not like someone's not going to go and become an AI engineer who's been an administrative assistant for 30 years now and is going to reskill into that. Like you got to be brutally realistic with some of how the world is going to operate going forward, and jobs are going to appear, and I think jobs are going to be created. And
I mean, I think the taxi service is a really interesting sector where Uber and increasingly driverless cars was massively disrupted in a very short space of time. And do you remember like Swan taxis just died?
Yeah.
It felt like that was overnight to me.
Yeah.
And I guess that's just the reality, isn't it, for so many industries?
Yeah, I mean, look, like coders themselves, the guys building AI here, IBM came out and they said they're wiping something like 30% of jobs in the next 5 years or so. And these are the these are the guys building AI itself. Like they did such a good job coding it.
But
they say,
but also this
Hope
was
they bought Bitcoin.
that was the narrative 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Everyone should be a computer programmer.
Yeah, exactly.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone's
And
got
now
to do.
you got ChatGPT to do coding.
Yeah. Oh, look, my own coding skills myself. I have used it so much in my job recently alone, and I am building off pseudocode I learned half here at Scotch here, and it's just kind of plugging stuff in and going can you get this in this complex language, and it's just spitting out for me. Is it right? Most of it I can tweak it there, and it's but this is the kind of stuff that I would have to go and pay a developer $150 an hour to go and get done for me.
Wow. But in saying that, you've got the foundational expertise to have learnt coding in the first place.
You can critique it.
Yeah,
you sort of can't fast track past expertise.
Is,
this is something with the kids. I find it really fascinating when I say, when they struggle with researching something, what to say, what to even ask ChatGPT. I think a lot of boys, it seems obvious to me, you just got to ask it that, and that, and it will give you this amazing result. But they don't. If you don't have the expertise, you don't know what to ask, right?
The use of technology for younger kids these days is what we were saying before around a lot of because technology has been so easy to use for people, like Apple will just give you you touch settings and there's 3 options there, you can turn on light or dark mode kind of thing. There's no under the hood tweaking of it, which you guys and myself would have to kind of deal with a little bit in those mid to late 2000s. Even when I was a kid, you got used to something going wrong. Things would break all the time. But you got full access to under the hood. You were able to go and tweak what you needed to tweak, and you were able to Google and kind of have a bit of an art of Googling that even, which is
maintenance. We understood maintenance.
Yeah. But these days it's just so if you aren't getting the response right in front of you, then it's just hands up, this is broken. And I think that transition will basically, unfortunately, mean that a lot of people are going to kind of be lost without this technology by its side, because if it breaks, they don't have the alternative, because they haven't really had to live before in a place where they, if it's broken, it's just you're done for. You're on your own.
Wow. All right. We're going to finish up now, Ty. We are so lucky to have had you here on the Range Project, mate. Thank you so much for coming in, just sharing your expertise and your thoughts, and
It's great to chat.
very exciting career it sounds like you've got at the moment. So, thanks again. We've got some quick-fire questions we'd like to finish with. Deserted Island, favourite album?
It's a good one. I mean, I've listened to Blood on the Tracks by Dylan probably enough times that, like, dissecting it for another Dawn of Time, I could probably do it. I'd be cheeky and grab like one of his bootlegs that are like 18
Which
CDs long. Cutting Edge Volume 12 probably with 66.
Have you heard
recordings.
Real Live?
Yes, yeah, of
Real
course.
Live's
84.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a great one.
tour.
And the Budokan, Live at Budokan
Yes,
is a really great one
78.
too. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Which
Now,
ones
have
did you
you-
say? I haven't heard.
Cutting Edge is a new series.
Okay.
Yeah. The real big ones of all outtakes back in the day.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
That's it.
Now, have you heard the albums sung by Taylor Swift? Because apparently the AI can make that happen. If you guys know.
Yeah. Well, on albums and everything like this, I do wonder if this form of the form of album is such one that I think is on. I mean, it's been on its way out for a while with Spotify and this single-driven kind of thing. But like that's an album I listened to in high school a lot. Blood on the Tracks. Like, when was the last time I sat down and listened to an album top to bottom?
Yeah.
Like it really has
Yeah, it
started.
has been
to
a
kind
while
of,
for me too. But yeah, I used to do it a lot.
But I mean, the album's like a book, isn't it? There's something very special,
Yeah.
precious about a
Yeah.
collection of songs together.
Yeah, it was written for that purpose.
For that, an artist used to actually take their time to like.
But now maybe they're not
order.
written for that purpose quite as much.
Made for a quick single.
Yeah.
All right. So, what book or books have had the most profound effect on you? And which ones would you recommend?
I read Siddhartha a long time ago. That obviously is a classic. Seneca Letters from a Stoic stings out. I think one that I've recommended and given a few copies of actually quite recently is 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Berkman. Don't know if you've heard of it.
Oh, I have heard of that.
Yeah, that was a good one. I think that almost half alleviated some kind of existential dread about AI as well early in the year, quite frankly. Makes you feel a lot more okay with your time on Earth, yeah.
I think
for
I have read a bit of that.
No, it's fantastic.
It's
I really
humbling, a
recommend
bit
that.
humbling, isn't it?
It is.
That's how long we got on this planet, by the way.
Oh right. Okay.
4,000 weeks.
Well,
If you're having a good
on
run
average.
at it. yeah, put it in perspective.
I have heard a bit about this
Yeah.
because you can plan it out on. Isn't that how he plans?
Some
out
people
each
would like
week
to
or
do the real, facing death in its face of having
Yeah,
a big
you got
poster
one
on the
more
wall
week,
and
and
you
then you
keep crossing one out, which
yeah.
is,
Not need that.
it'd be motivating, but
yeah,
also
when
a
you
bit
do
like,
that and it's like you're wishing your life away. I can't wait for next holidays and all that. And you're like, across one more week off, one more week closer to death.
Actually,
it.
he referenced that whole idea that you had about, that you raised today about that productivity. We fill the space.
Yes.
I think he was one of the guys who mentioned that, wasn't
Yeah,
he?
he does advocate for that a lot. Yeah, and I'm so guilty of that. You do that in work all the time. Like if you give yourself, if the deadline gets pushed by one more day, I will be submitting it at that last point the next day. But if you just kept it at midnight, it'd be done. Like it just would be.
What is that? Yeah, it's a strange psychology. All right, last one. What habit have you formed in the last 5 years, besides listening to lots of Rah Rah Viper, that's been most beneficial to you?
I think the word journaling kind of gets thrown out a lot out there. I'd say my one's more like logging. Like I like to log a lot of things down, particularly on paper, but even on my notes. My notes has probably thousands of little, just what I did that day, who with, things like that. I find that it has actually had quite a pronounced effect in kind of not so much introspection as it has just kind of, on time, slowing things down a little bit. Like I love having a jam-packed day and just noting everything down, who I was doing it with, like what was happening, how I was feeling. That just to me makes life feel a lot less like it's on autopilot, I think.
That reflection.
Yeah.
Awesome. Ty, thanks a lot.
My pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, mate.
Appreciate
Cheers.
it. Cheers.